Recipes are one of my favorite parts of using a Fujifilm camera, especially on a daily carry camera like the X100VI. So today I'm going to show you 4 recipes that you've got to try on your X100VI. These also will work for any X-Trans 5 sensor camera. Now, while these recipes are designed for X-Trans 5 cameras, that doesn't mean you can't use them with other X-Trans sensors. You just may have to adapt them. There's also often counterparts with the same film stock or recipe design created for the other X-Trans sensors, so make sure to look at Fuji X Weekly's site to check those out. Before we get into it, I do want to give a huge shout out to the creators of these recipes. Creating these recipes aren't easy and they take a lot of time and work, so a huge shout out to everyone who puts the time and effort into creating these recipes and furthering their community. I also have a whole series of videos just like this one where I review recipes, give photo examples, and tell you when each recipe works best. If you're interested, check it out. There's going to be a link below in the description with a playlist of all the videos just like this one. With that, let's get into it with number 1. 1976 Kodak. Like every video in this series, I try to include a recipe that's good for just about everything, and 1976 Kodak is exactly that. This recipe uses auto white balance, allowing it to adjust to most lighting conditions, but it may look a bit warm in artificial lighting. I also really enjoy the contrast this recipe has. The blacks can feel really deep when you want them to, but with a bit of overexposure they can flatten out for a more vintage look. If you're looking for an easy recipe to use without having to think if your photos will come out good or not, 1976 Kodak would be my choice. Fuji X100vi. There are some recipes that give what I call a memory vibe. They aren't necessarily the most accurate in color, but upon seeing them, you're immediately taken back to that moment, and Fuji X100vi gives that look. This recipe tends to lean a little bit more green and with a fixed white balance that isn't the most versatile, but I find it actually handles different lighting conditions surprisingly well. Pair the fixed white balance with a strong grain effect, and the photos taken with this recipe have a film-like look. If you're looking for a recipe that transports you back to when you took the photo, Fuji X100vi is for you. Emulsion 86. When it comes to moody and gray days, Emulsion 86 is the recipe I'm choosing. If you've watched other videos in this series, you'll find that this recipe has a similar look to Superior 800 or the Positive Film recipe, with a bit less of a blue tint. I really like how this recipe has a gritty feel without overdoing it, thanks to the strong and small grain settings. Emulsion 86 is a must-use recipe for overcast days when you want to add a little bit more mood to your photos. Ilford FP4 Plus 125. Like every video in the series, I try to include a black and white recipe. FP4 Plus is a really clean black and white look. The weak and large grain settings make for really crisp photos while still having a bit of texture to them. I also really like how this recipe preserves the shadows. You still get a good contrast, but you don't lose the details in the shadows. Personally, I think this gives the photos taken with this recipe a documentary style feel. If you shoot black and white, this recipe is one I'm sure you'll enjoy. So, which one of these recipes are you going to put in your camera and shoot with? I'd love to see the work you create with these recipes, so if you do shoot with these recipes, make sure you post the photos and tag me as well as the creator of the recipe so we can take a look and maybe drop you a comment. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a whole series of videos just like this one, so if you're looking for more recipes to try out, make sure you check that video out. I'll link in the description and somewhere over here. For now, go out and take some photos. Thanks for watching.